hard.
The intermediate.
Okay.
Don't have a lot of pictures.
We have Dave.
Dave is on.
Okay. We're getting some sort of thumbs up. Yeah.
Why shouldn't we be able to see the screen?
Hey, Kurt, can you project it?
It's February 9th, right? Yeah.
It is.
Oh, gosh, that's my voice.
It looks like it's an extension. Not there. You go.
Yeah.
Can they bring it closer? Because I can't see that far. I can't. I'm like, I cannot. I just should have brought my glasses. My eyes are
Is
tired.
it these slides?
Yeah.
It's not the same one she sent us. No job too small for Gary.
Yeah, it's very important I see their faces on.
Oh, you were in the, yeah.
Okay. Are we live, Kirk? We're live. Okay.
Good evening and welcome to the February 9th, 2021 Northern Lebanon School District Board meeting. I now call this meeting to order. This meeting is being recorded. Would you please rise as Director Marlowe leads us in the Pledge of Allegiance?
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you for joining us virtually this evening. Please know that all webinar community member participants will remain on mute during the meeting unless they have put in a request to speak during the public comment period. Those wishing to make public comment were asked to submit that request by 4 o'clock this evening via email or online form. Mrs. Martin, may I have a roll call, please?
Yes. Gray,
Here.
Erdman,
Here.
Fowler,
Here.
Marlowe,
Here.
Murray,
Here.
Klein,
Here.
Zekelic, Nam,
Here.
Bucks.
Here.
All members present.
Thank you. It should be noted that public notice was given for this meeting in accordance with Act 84 of 1986. May I have a motion to adopt the agenda as presented?
So moved?
May I have a second?
Second.
Is there any discussion? This is a unanimous roll call vote. Your vote will be recorded in the affirmative unless you say nay or I abstain. The motion has passed. Now we move on to several presentations for this evening. The high school students of the month for February are Michaela Kupstas and Luke Spangler. This award is sponsored jointly by the Fredericksburg and Jonestown Lions Club, and each recipient will be recognized at a future meeting of the Lions Club. The middle school student of the month for February is Abigail Wallish. This award is sponsored by the Northern Lebanon County Rotary Club, and each recipient will be recognized at a future meeting of the Rotary Club. Congratulations to all of those students. Do we have our student board rep up for presentation? So now we will hear from our student board representative, Island Zemba.
Okay, so hi. So this is what Student Council has been up to recently. So to start off with the King of Hearts dance, even though the dance was canceled, we're still going to have a King of Hearts court and raise money for charity. This year, the teachers are going to select the court. Student Council is going to make a video with the court bios and like information and stuff to give them more recognition. Next week is the King of Hearts Spirit Week. So the Monday is Meme Monday. Tuesday is Touchdown Tuesday. Wednesday is Async Atrocities Wednesday. Thursday is Superheroes Thursday, and then Friday is, of course, Blue and Gold Friday. Seniors won Class Wars, and we are trying to come up with a fun but social distance reward for seniors. We are making cards for the staff for Staff Appreciation Day. We will also be giving them candy with their card. We bought gift cards to give to Spirit Week winners, and we are going to be making a race to success bulletin board. Okay. That's it. Thank you.
Thank you, Island. It's great to hear about all of the good things that are still happening even during these challenging times. Our next presentation is by Brad Remig and Leah Martin.
Okay, I'm waiting. Does Kirk have the slides up? Are you guys able to
Yep. Oh, that's loud. Yeah. Yes, we have them. They're up. Thank you.
No, I can't see them. All right, so
Leanne, can you see the slides or you want me to talk you through it?
slides. So that's okay. I'll just.
Okay. He's on the first slide, which is total new construction costs.
Okay. I'm just going to bring them up here on my screen. Sorry. And then. Oh, there we go. Now I can see them. Thank you, Kirk. All right. So the total new, what we're going to go through tonight is some of the options that we've considered and we've discussed before we came to the conclusion for the $53 million bond that we have on the agenda for tonight. So you want to just go to the next slide. There we go. Thank you. So the $53 million for the total new construction cost bond that we have presented was for the elementary school construction project with $48 million for that, and also for athletic facilities for $5 million. So that would be the $53 million total with two bonds, each repaid over 30 years. To date on this project, working with Crabtree and Fidavia and all the presentations and the research that we have done, $820,000 has been spent, and we intend to use some of the bond money to reimburse the school district for this and to cover these costs that have been spent to date. Okay, next slide. One of the other scenarios that we had originally looked at was a full elementary model, and that was a $35 million cost, and this was full upgrades to each of the existing 4 elementary buildings. We still wouldn't be achieving the education equity that we had desired, and we would still have the variance in class sizes because of the way it would be spread out over the 4 different buildings. And the next scenario Gary is going to talk about, and that's with we have been asked the question, what if we would do nothing? And Gary's going to talk through this, but we're at a point that our buildings are coming close to their end, or in many cases, they've already exceeded their life expectancy on many of the major mechanical systems. So that would be the necessary elementary improvements, and Gary's going to talk about those in the next 2 slides.
Yeah, this is a tough question, and Director Marlowe asked it, I think, about a couple of months ago. What happens if we do nothing? And, through discussions, doing nothing, while that's an option in terms of maybe not planning things, we have things that are on their last legs. I asked Mason to go through and basically let's look at the things that he felt were going to need replaced or repaired over the next 5 years. For instance, our HVAC system is no longer under warranty and is past its typical lifespan. And that's a very costly replacement, closer to the millions of dollars than it is to the hundreds of thousands. And I asked Mason, can you give me an estimate? He said, no, I can't give you an estimate. We'd have to have professionals come in on some of these things and give us estimates. And we'd have the number of things. If you look at this, the fire sprinkler systems, the HVAC systems, the fire alarms, the entrances, for particularly the secure entrance at East Hanover and at Lickdale, the sunken area of the building at Fredericksburg that is on that one wing on the end that was an addition that is now sinking. All of those things we would need to bring people in, and we would need to get estimates on all of those things in order to figure out what that cost would be. So went a little bit different route, and we pulled up the 2018 feasibility study that Gilbert did. Gilbert had an option on there of what it would be to maintain the existing elementary schools without the flexible instructional spaces, just addressing the other needs. That was just one of the choices. At that particular time, they estimated that at $24.5 million. Now, I will tell you that the cost per square foot back then, I did the square footage of the elementary and used that to calculate their cost per square feet. It came out to be $148 per square foot. However, right now, based on the November figures that we had gotten from Crabtree, that they had in November presented $180 a square foot. So that 24.5 might actually be on the light side if you look at it from today's standpoint. So, but we did have projections. We did have a bond projection of 25 million, which was very close to that 24.5 million. And if you go to the next slide, Kirk, I just want to talk a little bit about what that doesn't include. And it doesn't include those flexible instructional areas. And I will tell you that from an educational standpoint, this is something that I do believe in. I think if I've sent you that survey from our vision, and you talk about students achieving their potential and having the ability to pursue their passions. Well, part of that is putting them in situations where, and I listed some things from a 2019 study, but honestly, you could go to pretty much any educational journal right now, and they talk about student choice and flexible expectations, flexible instructional areas, collaboration. These are just some of the things from that study. Collaboration, the better ability to be creative and innovative, communication, problem solving, and experiential learning. So many things that you can do as you create spaces that are more conducive than an 850 square foot classroom. It also doesn't include the athletic facilities improvements. And finally, if we do not build a building that we can take 6th grade and the DAO out of here, when we go to do something with this building, we actually have to build on, because we don't have enough. While projected enrollment goes down in about 6-7 years as it comes through to the middle school, over the next 3 or 4 years, if you remember Dr. Witham talking about the next several years, we wind up in this situation where we have some big classes in the elementary school that we run out of space here, and we have to look at it in either a trailer situation, or they suggested if we're not going to move 6th in the DAO, an actual addition. And if you probably don't remember the picture, but the picture was an addition coming out of near where the cafeteria was, and then connecting to the back end where that auditorium entrance was. It doesn't include any of those things in that $24.5 million. So just want to be clear that when we look at the 3 options, you have the option to build the elementary school. You have the option to remodel or renovate the 4 existing elementary schools, and you have a do nothing option, but the do nothing option really isn't do nothing, because you still have to replace and repair some things. In addition to that, it does not take care of some of the things that we were shooting for. So I think the next slide, Leanne's going to show you the numbers and how that works out. Oh, hey, Kirk, is there any way we can minimize the picture or move them? There, yep. There you go. That works.
Are you guys good now? You can see it correctly?
Yep.
Okay. So In our current bond, our current budget, what we had planned for the bond repayments is the 1.23 million of local effort. And this slide, what it does is it compares in one glance the three different scenarios that we just discussed. The annual bond payment shown here on that first line across there, the annual bond payment for the 3.43 million for the new elementary construction. What we did was I just looked at once we get out of the graduated repayments, and that's an average of what our higher payments would be. So that's shown across there in a line. But what we plan to do with the bonds is to have graduated payments after we pay off our current debt. We can be creative, and that's where Brad Remigan, PFM come in, and they kind of help us plan out how we want to repay it so that it best suits the district. As you can see in the third row here, there is an annual savings that we're projecting for the new elementary construction and athletic fields. And we would not have any savings with the other two scenarios that we discussed this evening. And then the bottom line is the annual cost once we realize those savings. And the savings will only come into play once we're about 3 years in. But like I said, we have the graduated repayments so that we're not fully paying that 3.43 million that we're estimating on the top line until we get out of the first 9 years or so where we're having the lower payments. So the annual cost there is going across, compares them with the savings, and also once we get into the full payments for each one for the three different scenarios. So as you can see, once you realize the savings, the new elementary construction and the athletic field, the 53 million comes in below the 35 million with a full remodel, and it comes in about equal to slightly below the $25 million scenario that Gary just discussed.
Can I ask a question? When we're talking about the annual cost, what's the period that we're talking about? We're talking about an equivalent period of time, right? Are we talking 20-year repayment? This is the annual cost over 20 years for all three of those scenarios?
It would be a 30-year.
30-year?
Yes.
And that's 30 years for all three, right?
Yes. Like, so it's comparing a similar repayment structure for all of them. Yes.
Okay. Thank you.
And the bond payment, Leanne, just to chime in, is an average over those 30 years.
Okay.
So that 3.4, we won't pay the 3.4 right away, and we won't pay the 3.4 or around that number until the 1.2 comes off. And the others could be structured similarly as well.
Mm-hmm.
We can get creative with the structuring on what best suits the district and what our objectives are for the budgets of the next couple of years and a long-term look at that. And that's where Brad comes into play. He allows us to be pretty creative, and they work with us on that. And in the PFM booklet that's available, it's online, and I believe I had emailed it to the board members. That goes in and shows the entire repayment schedule in depth there. Okay, can we go to the next slide, Kirk? Okay, so you've all seen this type of information from me in the past when I presented my budget numbers. So this is just the additional revenue that would be experienced by the district with a 3% and a 3.8% tax increase. And I included a column here with the additional cost of the average homeowner, just because we always like to see that number. So as you can see, that's over on the far right with the $74 at a 3%, and then a 3.8% is a $94 increase to the average homeowner in the district.
Leanne, can you remind everyone why you put 3.8 in there?
Yeah, sure. The 3.8% is the maximum that the state would allow us to go to with our index. So if we wanted to go past that, we would have to qualify for an exception at this point.
And that's important because keep in mind, you know, the one downfall to building, well, I don't want to say one, there's always more than one, but one of the downfalls to building is we start building, we borrow, we don't have operational savings in the first 2 years. It's not until we move into the building that we have operational savings. So you wind up having to make a bond payment, but you don't have, you know, you gotta find that revenue somewhere. Go ahead, Leanne.
Okay, and can we go to the next slide, please, Kirk? Thanks. And this is just an outline of the timeline and the process of what we'll be going through. So tonight you received an update on where we're at with the bond and why we chose the scenario that we did. And tonight you would be approving an authorization to work with PFM Financial Advisors for us to prepare everything to move forward. And you would be board approval for bond parameters in March. And then we would do an online auction on March 10th or later for the bonds, and settlement would be April 15th. And if you have any questions on the process or what's the next steps, Brad is on here to answer any of those questions.
Questions? Okay, Leanne, I don't hear any questions. Is that the last slide?
That is the last slide for me, so thank you.
Thank you.
All right, now we move on to the superintendent's report. Dr. Messinger.
Yeah, just wanted to give you an update on long-term planning. I actually got to work on that for a few hours today. I am about halfway through taking all the notes from the groups and compiling that into one document. It's kind of exciting to see it come into shape. I anticipate having that done, a draft of that done in the next couple of weeks. Wanted to talk briefly about flexible instructional days. As you know, we're going to give our first shot at an asynchronous day on Monday, assuming we don't have a snowstorm before that. I do want to say I had gotten a few questions about, well, why aren't you doing synchronous? And while during COVID I could do synchronous, we actually were approved by the state, as you know, for flexible instructional days before this craziness or in the midst of this craziness. And one of the things that the state really emphasized, and I had to submit a plan, they actually gave it back to me, I had to submit it again, because they really want to make sure it's an equitable situation for our kids that do not have internet. And to have a synchronous day for them is a problem because those kids can't access it. Special education was a big thing, and kids without the internet was a big thing. And, you know, we don't have enough hotspots to give out to every single kid that doesn't have the internet in our district. So when you start to, I had a discussion with the gentleman because I was trying to figure out what they were looking for, because they just kind of send it back and say, well, you have to make changes, but they're not specific. So I contacted him, and it's really almost impossible to do a synchronous situation for our kids that don't have the internet. So, and I was hesitant to get used to a synchronous day, even though we have COVID, and then next year not be able to come back and do it. So we're practicing the asynchronous thing, working with teachers to get them in a situation where they kind of have that toolbox of snow day material. There's a lot of good activities I think you can do there. We actually did some sample lessons for the state to get approval. But it is going to be a little bit of a learning process. Fortunately, we've had practice because of COVID. So I think we're set up to go. I will also say we are out of snow days. So if I know about the snow, then we will try to do an asynchronous day. So if Wednesday morning I find out, yeah, it looks pretty good, the snowstorm's coming on Thursday, we'll attempt to do an asynchronous day, and we won't have to, we're out of snow days anyway, so we wouldn't have to, find a day at the end of the school year. So we're gonna take a shot at that. But that's the update on that. And then finally, I just wanted to draw attention. We have a bunch of winter activities that are going on right now, but I just want to recognize the bowling team who is undefeated right now. I believe they have 4 seniors. Is that right?
Yes.
And are they finished? Do they have one more?
They have one more league game next week.
One more league game, and then if they win that, they go through the whole season undefeated. And I think they have a good shot at some postseason accolades as well. But wanted to recognize them. The other teams are going strong too, but bowling's a little closer to the end of the season, and they're having a great year. So I wanted to draw attention to that as well. And that's the end of my report.
Thank you. Is there any old business for discussion this evening? All right, hearing none, we will move on to the public comment period. Those wishing to make public comment were asked to submit that request by 4 o'clock this evening via email or online form. Mrs. Martin, did we have any requests for public comment?
No, we didn't.
All right, thank you. Okay, then if there's no public comment, then we move on to the items for board action on the consent calendar. So tonight we have items 1 through 21 on our consent calendar. And all of these were discussed at the meeting last week. May I have a motion to approve the consent calendar as presented?
Motion to approve.
May I have a second?
Second.
Is there any discussion? This is a unanimous roll call vote. Your vote will be recorded in the affirmative unless you say nay or I abstain. The motion has passed. We do have an informational item, item J. The updated winter paid and volunteer coach lists are included with tonight's agenda. We have 4 items on for discussion for board action tonight. Dr. Messinger, would you like to present these?
Yeah. Number 1 is the dump truck that I talked about. And in all honesty, I'm not convinced that we will actually be able to purchase a dump truck in this fiscal year. Anyone that is looking for dump trucks, they are not available. We've contacted multiple places and are having difficulty finding them. They won't even order them at this point. So it may be spring till we get a lead on one. It may be July till we have that and pay for that. But we're going to shop for it if we can find one, and there's a maximum cost on there. But we do have our, the one we currently have, as you know, I had emailed that information from DB Fisher, who works on it with the hydraulics leak, and there's also quite a bit of rust on the bottom side that it's just a matter of time at this point. But that is number 1. Would you like to do them separately or together, Director Bucks?
I think it's okay if we do all 4.
Okay. The number 2 is just an FMLA leave request from one of our high school instructional assistants. Number 3, we had a position for an FMLA leave advertised for a substitute. We found a name on Monday, and we added Hannah Fillick to that to the agenda for the classified substitute to help us with our custodial work. And then finally, a student settlement agreement for you to approve.
Thank you. May I have a motion to approve items 1 through 4 as presented?
Motion to approve.
May I have a second?
Second.
Is there any discussion on these items?
Regarding the dump truck, where would those funds, what would those come from?
Well, they've come out of the maintenance fund at this point. Right now, they're under budget, over budget in some specific areas due to COVID,
Okay.
but under budget as a whole. We would take it from there.
Okay.
What will we do in the interim if we are not able to purchase the new dump truck soon? What will we use in that interim?
That's a good question. And I'd have to check with Mason about a plan for that. I mean, anything that we can repair, we try to keep repairing to try to get through winter. The major function of it during the winter is the salt and spreading the salt. In the summer, it's more the mulch and the grounds things as they're pruning and that kind of thing. But right now it's mostly the salt. May have to look at borrowing one if need be, but I'll ask Mason and get back to you. Good question.
Okay. Are there any other, or is there any other discussion for these items? Hearing none, this is a unanimous roll call vote. Your vote will be recorded in the affirmative unless you say nay or I abstain. The motion has passed. Now we move on to our reports from our representatives. Our first is from the Career and Technology Center. Director Klein, do you have a report for us?
Yeah, I have two things I want to point out. The first is at our last meeting, the Joint Operation Committee reviewed with the auditors our most recent audit report for the CTC, and we had a nice clean report, so everything looks great. The other thing I want to bring up is tonight, the CTC's holding a virtual open house. This is the first time they're doing that. Normally, they invite the community in to come in and walk around the facility and take a look at the programs. But we can't do that during COVID. So they decided to hold a virtual open house tonight. It's going from 6 to 8. And that's all I have to report on. Thank you.
Thank you for that report, Director Klein. Moving on to our second item there, that is our IU13 representative, Director Murray.
I don't have anything specific to report tonight. Thank you.
Okay, thanks. And then our legislative PSBA liaison is Director Sekelic.
Nothing to report at this time.
Okay, thank you. We just got word that we did have a community member that did wish to make comment this evening, and that is Mr. Andrew Murphy. Mr. Murphy, when you are given the opportunity to speak, you will have 4 minutes. Please announce your name and address before you speak. Thank you.
Andrew Murphy, 1828 Blacksbridge Road, Anvil, PA. I think it's a little useless speaking after you guys voted on the dump truck, because why are we spending $62,000 for a dump truck? Because was it in the budget last year? Basically, why not? You're lowering your footprint to 2 schools instead of 6 schools. So won't you have more equipment than you need because of all the buildings that you're getting rid of? You can rent from Eagle Rental. You can rent a dump truck for $300 a day, $1,000 a week, or $3,000 a month. We're not using the dump truck every day, are we? So you can save some of the money there. If you do it with a dump trailer instead, $100 a day, $300 a week, or $800 a month. Significantly less cost, significantly a lot more cost savings. When you build this new school, because pretty much at the Act 34 hearing, they seem to make it sound like a done deal. You're going to go down to 2 libraries from 6 libraries. Are you reducing staff? Same thing with the cafeteria. What about the maintenance? Because you're having less buildings. And you guys are talking about the annual increases, what the increase from this year is from last year for the millage on these new budget for $74 or $94 a year. What's the increase over 4 to 5 years cumulative? I remember a director saying it was the cost of a tank of gas. Well, if you raise the cost of a tank of gas every single year, which this is a lot more than it costs of gas unless you have a Hummer, that over years is a large amount of extra you're asking the taxpayers to pay. You're going from a $25 million project of what was proposed for repairs to 48, actually 53, because now you just tossed in the athletic facilities, which I thought that was in the original numbers. But you guys just keep spending money and not cutting. But why buy the truck when you can rent it? Because you're predicting in 2 years to have 2 buildings instead of 6.
Mr. Murphy, does that conclude your comments?
Yes.
All right, thank you.
Thanks, Mr. Murphy. This is Brooke Say, the solicitor. You bring up a good point. I think there was a miscommunication about receipt of your request to speak prior to board action. So therefore, it's my recommendation to the board that you consider Mr. Murphy's comments, which were on items that were on the agenda for voting today, which means the board was to take official action only after it received public comment. Therefore, it's my recommendation that the board consider the comment and revote on both the consent agenda as well as the action items. And those will be considered the official votes of the board. So I'll pass it over to Dr. Bucks.
Thank you for pointing that out to us. All right, so we will first do the vote for our consent items. So again, our consent items are items 1 through 21 on the agenda as listed. May I have a motion to approve the consent calendar as presented?
Motion to approve.
May I have a second?
Second.
Is there any discussion? This is a unanimous roll call vote. Your vote will be recorded in the affirmative unless you say nay or I abstain. The motion has passed. And now we will do our revote on our discussion items. Those are items 1 through 4 on the discussion calendar. May I have a motion to approve the discussion items 1 through 4 as presented?
Motion to approve.
May I have a second?
Second.
Is there any discussion? This is a unanimous roll call vote. Your vote will be recorded in the affirmative unless you say nay or I abstain. The motion has passed. I'd like to announce a couple dates to remember. So as Dr. Messinger pointed out, February 15th on Monday, we will have the flexible instruction day. And then we have our 2 board meetings in March. The 2nd is the committee meeting, and the 8th is our normal voting meeting, and those are at 6:30. I'm sorry, I announced that incorrectly. I apologize. March 2nd is our committee meeting. March 9th is our general voting meeting at 6:30. And I would like to announce the board met in executive session tonight, February 9th, immediately preceding this meeting to discuss personnel issues and confidential legal student information. Is there anything else for the good of the order this evening? Hearing none, may I have a motion to adjourn?
Motion to adjourn.
May I have a second?
Second.
Is there any discussion? This is a unanimous roll call vote. Your vote will be recorded in the affirmative unless you say nay or I abstain. The motion has passed. This meeting is adjourned. Have a great evening, everyone.